In Flip the Switch, Stories of Change, you meet individuals that contribute to a big vision, the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. It has the ambitious goal to transform our world and create a sustainable future for all. For more info about the podcast, visit we-do-change.org/podcast.
I have been passionate about justice and equality from a very young age. I grew up in the former GDR and saw that with the fall of the Berlin Wall and subsequently with the fall of the Iron Curtain, I saw at a very young age what is possible if people get together and demonstrate for their rights and want a change in society, and the amount of change that is possible almost virtually overnight. So that really shaped me when I was very young. And then in 2015, so really a number of years later, I was working with an international organization. I was still very passionate on eliminating injustice in the world. I was focusing on inclusion and diversity in organizations and how that can be implemented. And in a way, I was a little bit stuck in my work. I thought you can change structures and you can do a lot of things to enhance equality. And still, I thought there was some point where you can't get or reach people's hearts and actually bring about real change. And that's when I came upon the Global Leadership Academy run by the GIZ. And in 2015, they launched the Power of Diversity Lab, which I subsequently joined. And the interesting thing about that particular lab was that it was in collaboration with the Deep Democracy Institute from the US, and that the idea behind deep democracy in a way promised to dig deeper into personal levels and in societal levels to bring about change on a deeper meaning, and at the same time establish a kind of societal togetherness or way of being with one another that to me provided some kind of hope in all of the quite challenging societal topics, in a way that it allowed a way of conflict with each other and capturing all of the voices that are present in any given society, or at least trying to capture those voices and making them visible, that a broader dialogue is possible beyond the mere majority-minority discussions we are seeing mostly in democratic societies. So to unearth a lot of voices that are present in our current very complex societies, and that I found a really promising approach. And I joined the Power of Diversity lab in 2015, and I went through the program, and it was a real change for me in the way I connected to people from around the world, coming from so many different walks of life, and coming together and going through those processes together as a group where we fought and laughed and cried and danced, that I thought, in a way, this is like we are like in a mini society here, representing all those different voices, and we can make it to get together and to solve issues with each other. So why shouldn't it be possible for everybody else, or in broader society? So by the end of 2015, I was in a personal situation that I had to take a decision, and for me the decision was that I could probably be more valuable to society as a whole as a worker or for all things inclusion and diversity, because that's really where my passion and my expertise is. And I should dedicate all of my time to that particular topic. So for me, the decision by the end of 2015 was to start my own business and become a full-time freelancer in everything regarding equality and diversity. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And there are a lot of conflicts around a lot of issues in equality. And for me, collaboration with others is really important in that issue, because I couldn't possibly do that job on my own. It's vital for the work that I do and for the quality of the work that I do that I engage in networks and collaborate with others in that issue, to keep my work relevant, to question the way I work constantly. So I need that exchange with other people in the field and also with people who don't have a clue what I'm doing, because they usually ask the best questions. If I had to choose one sustainable development goal that's closest to my heart, it would be Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is gender equality. I would choose this particular sustainable development goal because, first of all, I am a woman myself. I am living in a patriarchal society, which in many instances still prefers boys and men over women and girls generally, or in many cases. And dividing society on the grounds of gender seems like a really, if you look at it closely, seems like a really strange thing to do, because it seems that it's a fairly straightforward distinction of society, and it's a very binary distinction of society. But when you dig deeper into the matter, then you can actually see that gender, to some extent, doesn't really explain any differences at all. But for a very, very long time, it's been given as the reason why certain people of a particular gender are allowed to do things, can't do things, shouldn't do things, should be protected, should be kept from things. So women should be kept from learning in universities because their brains are actually not capable of intellectual, cognitive work. So at some point that was common knowledge, and to me that's on a particular level so frustrating and infuriating, and that it seems like my lifetime is not enough to change that. And you can hear, or you've heard over centuries, so many stories of women and girls that are being exposed to violence, being kept from their chances. So that's a really big driver for me to actually change something in society. So that's only one tiny part when we look at gender. It's important to also look at the notion of gender and what it actually means, not just looking at men and women and girls and boys, but also at trans people, at intersex people. So how does that all relate to the kind of equal society we would like to have or aspire to as a society? Right now, I am working, for example, with students and teaching future business leaders at university, and a large part of the teaching is actually dismantling or questioning notions of gender and gender diversity, and what does it actually mean in our society when we look at it from an historical perspective. Where are we coming from? Where are we going to? How does gender relate to other, for example, dimensions of diversity like disability or ethnicity, race, for example, or sexual orientation? And how does that all come together and forming the kind of society we currently have, and maybe how they, as future leaders from companies, public service, may have an influence on how that society is being shaped in the future. And for that, I feel it's essential to teach the future leaders in our societies how structures around gender work in our societies and what can be done to actually change that story towards more equality for everyone in our society. I believe one of the biggest achievements regarding my work towards Agenda 2030 would be in actually sticking with it and keep going, whatever the situation and whatever is being thrown at me in a professional way or a personal way in that area. So discussions can get really heated. The work as a freelance consultant in that area can be really hard at times. And to just keep going and believing that there's actually equality possible in our society, and it's worth fighting for that equality again and again and again, I would regard as one of my biggest achievements in working in that area. And one of the key learnings around that, and that actually was also triggered by things I learned at the Diversity Lab, which I attended in 2015, and learning more about process work and deep democracy, that was looking at it in cycles and processes and valuing conflicts and open discussions around topics where you don't necessarily have the same opinion as somebody else, and valuing that kind of conflict as a possibility to build a new relationship. And I think that was one of the key learnings along the way, that even if I am in a really difficult conflict with somebody professionally or personally, finding a way to deal with that conflict, and by the end of that particular conflict circle, maybe come out the other way and think, okay, we've been going a bit of the journey together, and now we've built a relationship out of that, and see where that takes us next. And that, to me, is a very hopeful approach to the whole agenda or the whole area of making our societies more equal. Because when you think of it, more diversity and more equality might not necessarily result in less conflict. It's actually proven that it results in more conflict. So one of the biggest things we can learn along the way is how do we deal with conflict? How can we engage with each other? And how can we really, in a way, I'm not there yet, but that's where I'm aiming at, really indulge in the conflict, and whenever we see conflict on the rise, and actually get quicker and say, okay, wow, there's a conflict ahead, yes, let's go into it, and let's have a conflict, and let's look forward to the relationship we're gonna build out of that conflict. And I would recommend to everyone to look at their conflict patterns and how they can actually engage more in conflict and not less, and how to learn how to deal with conflict in our society. And there's so much issues around dividing society right now, and actually it's been always around the division of societies and not being in solidarity with groups of people you don't necessarily relate to easily, that I feel it's really important to bridge that divide and find a way to talk to each other, even if we don't have the same opinion or the same starting point. We don't have the aim to also reach the same conclusion at the end, and still keep that relationship going. I personally think the Sustainable Development Goals are a good structure along the way. They help focus on particular issues that are important for our world society and our living together on this planet, and to enable actually everybody to live on that planet peacefully, equally, in justice, access to resources. And that's why I think the social development goals are good, because they're actually splitting down what we need to look after and putting goals to it and having action plans attached to it. So that's generally a good thing. For the future, I would wish for more questioning of power relations, and generally working on issues, on global issues where we can change power relations generally around the globe, questioning economic models as a whole to keep the globe and the global society as such sustainable in the long run. I feel that sometimes isn't questioned enough. And with regards to one of my favorite sustainable development goal, the gender equality one, number 5, I would hope for including more men in the overall discussion, because it's been focused. I mean, it is important to focus on women and girls generally, but to me, it seems that's only taking it halfway, because we need everybody on the planet to engage in gender equality, and it's relevant for everybody on the planet to engage in gender equality. And at the end of the day, that should be valuable for everybody on the planet. And at the same time, I would like to work more on pulling down the binaries of men and women and having a still very much binary picture of gender as a whole. So how would society change if we change to a gender diversity perspective that regards trans people, interpeople, along a spectrum of gender diversity where everybody can be part of that society and not being seen as abnormal or not belonging to this society because of the gender they have, and getting the support they need and stopping the violence against trans people and interpeople worldwide. So that would be something I would like to see in future developments of sustainable development goals. My name is Katrin Tietze. I'm currently living in Bremen, which is northwest Germany, and I work as a freelance consultant with everything regarding diversity, inclusion, equality with organizations. I am a member of the GLAC community since 2015. Thank you for listening to my story. What is your contribution to Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is gender equality? It's your turn now. I challenge you to do something good in relation to Sustainable Development Goal number 5 for gender equality in the next 7 days. Share your outcome with me via email, Twitter, or LinkedIn. More information on wedochange.org/podcast. I would love to hear about it.
Join us again next time for another story of Flip the Switch, Stories of Change, brought to you by the GLAC community. For more info, visit we-do-change.org/podcast. Flip the switch and make a difference.